Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. I am absolutely honored to be here. Like Marissa said, we met this past fall and I was sharing with her about myself and some ideas and passions that I had. And after we got back from the retreat, I got an email from her asking if I wanted to speak at one of her power hours. And I said, yeah, sure, but what would I talk about? And without skipping a beat, she said, well, neurodiversity in the workplace, of course. And so that was so encouraging because it is something that I'm passionate about, but I wasn't really sure that anyone else would want to hear what I had to say. So thank you so much, Marissa. That was incredibly encouraging for me. And now that I feel like I have that encouragement from her, I'm excited to share with all of you. So I will share my screen and we will get going. I am not the most technologically savvy person. And of course, now it's blocking my ability to see my PowerPoint. We've got this, guys. Haha. All right, supporting neurodiverse humans at work and in the workplace. Today, we'll be going over defining neurodiversity, what it is, benefits of a neurodiverse workplace, how to hire neurodiverse talent, supporting a neurodiverse team, and then some quick resources so that we can continue learning together afterward. About me, my name is Amanda DeOCampo. I was born and raised in San Jose, California. Both my parents are on this call this morning, so I grew up in an incredibly supportive and loving household. I have degrees in social and behavioral sciences, religion, and a minor in psychology. I have always been interested in the human brain and how it worked. I was diagnosed with ADHD last year at the age of 30, and sitting in a counselor's office for a completely different issue, he looked at me and went, have you ever been diagnosed with ADHD by chance? And I said, yeah, I think someone mentioned it when I was seven or eight, and I took meds for like a week and they didn't work, so I must not have it. I don't have it. And he nodded and said, well, would you be interested in looking at a little self-assessment real quick? And after looking at that self-assessment with him, I believe I had 16 of the 18 symptoms that were on the list for ADHD. And at that moment, the heavens opened up to me and I went, oh, this makes sense. I make sense now. And it took me actually a full another year before I went back for my official diagnosis. And now I have paperwork that I can show to my doctor or employer that will give me accommodations. But that year of thinking, oh, I have ADHD, what does that look like? And researching really was so encouraging because for so long I felt like that something was wrong with me. Like I was inconsiderate, rude, disorganized, and there was no reason for it. And now that I know that I have ADHD and my brain works a little differently, I'm able to have so much grace and compassion for myself. And I hope that by sharing some of these insights with you, we can have grace and compassion with ourselves and also with those around us. So defining neurodiversity, what is it? Who is neurodiverse? And why does it matter? Why do we even care? A neurodiversity is a term that was first coined by Judy Singer in 1998. She is an Australian social scientist who herself has autism. And she wrote an article that was published in the Atlantic, and it talked about the differences in the human brain and how neurodiversity is going to be crucial in our day and age as we are progressing, especially in STEM and in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, that people with these unique brains are so uniquely gifted and skilled to be able to work in technology specifically is what this article was about. The Oxford Dictionary, I grabbed that definition just so that we have something to kind of base off of. It's the range of differences in individual brain function regarded as part of the normal variation of the human population. So who is neurodiverse or neurodivergent? Who falls outside of that neurotypical brain? Those are going to be people with autism, ADHD like myself, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and dyspraxia. Those are some fun words. Tourette syndrome and more. There's a lot of, it is a big umbrella term. So it's anyone that falls outside of that neurotypical brain. OCD and bipolar are also often put in that umbrella. And then why does it matter? Neurodiversity is incredibly common. I have this little pie graph. 1 in 6 people, or almost 17% of our population, is neurodiverse or falls under that neurodivergent umbrella. So this isn't something that we encounter every once in a while. This is an absolutely daily thing. Multiple times a day, we're interacting with people who are neurodiverse. And everybody wants to be known, understood, and accepted. It is so important that I know that I feel that I want to be known, understood, and accepted, and I would imagine that you do too. And so when we come from that point of wanting to know, understand, and accept others, we're so much more able to be inclusive and really give and receive what we need as humans. Neurodiverse humans are also uniquely gifted, able to use their strengths in the workplace. Here are some familiar faces. You probably recognize most, if not all, of these people. And what do they have in common? They're all neurodiverse. So Simone Biles, American Olympic gold medalist, has ADHD. Tim Burton, I'm sure you know and love some of his movies. He has such a unique brain and is on the autism spectrum. Greta Thunberg, Swedish activist, she is so passionate and uses her passion for good as she wants to combat global warming. Richard Branson, he is the founder of the Virgin Companies, has ADHD and dyslexia. These are just a few of the many people who have excelled in their fields who have different types of neurodiversity. Benefits of a neurodiverse workplace. Aristotle is known to say the whole is more than the sum of its parts. So as we come together in a neurodiverse workplace, together we are stronger than we would be separately as we leverage and utilize everybody's strengths. Organizations of all sizes can benefit from supporting neurodiversity at work. There are incredible skills and talents of neurodivergent workers. Some of these skills are innovation and creativity, technical design, creative strengths. People with autism are known for having specialist knowledge, incredible memory, accuracy, attention to detail. I was reading an article about how companies are leveraging autistic workers to help train their AI. And so like the CAPTCHA picture that we see where we all have to like click the bicycles or the stoplights, they're using photos for AI where individuals with autism are able to look at these photos and see different types of military weapons from satellite images. And because they have such incredible attention to detail and ability to see patterns, they're able to pinpoint these teeny tiny images from the satellite and train our AI technology to be able to find that in the future. So really incredible skills, incredible problem solving, high levels of concentration. People with autism and also ADHD, though ADHD people have trouble regulating their attention, they do have the ability to what's called hyperfocus. And so when they are very interested in a task, are able to hyperfocus for many hours, for better or for worse, sometimes forgetting to eat or drink or go to the restroom, but being able to focus for long amounts of times on things that interest them. So hiring neurodiverse talent. Finding the talent we never knew we needed. When hiring neurodiverse talent, we maybe need to think outside of the box and really ask a lot of questions, because the hiring process has, I think, become pretty routine and mundane, and we're finding that the way that we hire doesn't actually predict whether or not an employee will be good in the role. So defining the role. As we're looking for new talent and a new role, as a role opens up in our company, what skills are necessary for that employee to excel in the role? Are there any biases that we have within this job description that aren't actually necessary? Do we need them to, for example, have a bubbly personality? If they're a receptionist or maybe someone in outside sales, that would be a good component for them to have. But if they're working in a behind the scenes role or in maybe in software engineering, do they need to have that bubbly personality for them to be a good culture fit, or do they need to be able to do the skills of that job well? And then what kind of accommodations would they need to or be able to have for that role? Is it a role that can be done remotely or in a quiet workspace? Does it need to be done in a co-working setting? What are the necessary components of that role? And then as we're reviewing, recruiting and interviewing, what does the interview process look like, and how does it showcase the skills necessary for the role that we're hiring for? Many companies are moving away from a traditional interview process where we get a resume and then we call someone in for an in-person interview to have a conversation about the role. Oftentimes people, especially on the autism spectrum, have difficulty with unexpected questions and with being put outside of their element. And so could there be an aptitude test or an ability to take away the surprise element from the interview? I was reading about Ernst & Young. They have an incredible neurodiversity program, and they, as much as they are able to, take away the element of surprise from their interview process. And so by doing this, they're able to really find whether or not the employee is able to do the skills required for the job. If it's a job that does require you to think on your feet and be able to answer questions quickly and have a conversation, then a traditional conversational interview would be an incredible way to see if the employee is able to work in that environment. But if it's a job that's going to be repetitive in nature, that's going to be done behind the scenes, that they're going to be able to do it on their own time in the comfort of their own home or office, they may not need to have that element of surprise with the interview. And then during the onboarding process, being very clear about expectations within the role. Is the role clearly defined? What's the type of work that is expected to be done, where and how? And then are employees empowered to ask for the accommodations that they need and then make decisions to support their own needs? Something that is really useful for a lot of people with neurodiversity is noise canceling headphones, with the ability to go into a sensory safe environment where maybe light is reduced or noise is reduced. So being able to empower our employees to ask for the accommodations that they need. And then once we have our incredible neurodiverse team on staff, how do we support and retain this talent that we have? As always, communication is key. Really opening up our lines of communication is so important. Being able to ask our team what we need from them and then have our team be able to ask us what they need from us is so important. And keeping a regular communication and check-in process, having systems as much as possible for what our expectations are, how they can be clearly accomplished, and checking in and having reasons to celebrate. The neurotypical brain is wired for urgency and importance. We are going to prioritize urgency and importance over all else as a neurotypical. Myself, as a neurodivergent, I have an interest-driven brain as well as other neurodivergent people. And so we are going to do what is most interesting to us, whether or not it is more urgent or important, because everything seems equally urgent and important to a neurodiverse brain. And so having that clear communication with our managers is so important. And oftentimes people with neurodiversity have trouble with our executive functions. So executive function is working memory, the ability to retain, manipulate distinct information. And so hearing verbal or auditory information for a boss to come into our office and say, hey, can you do X, Y, and Z, and then leave, that working memory is really tricky for someone with ADHD. So being able to have expectations be both written and heard, have multiple ways to get that information is so important. Another executive function is mental flexibility. So the ability to sustain or shift attention can be difficult for someone on the with neurodiversity. So though we're focused on one task, having someone come into our office and distract us will make it difficult to go back to that same task. That ability to sustain and shift focus and come back to it is difficult. And then self-control can also be difficult for someone with neurodiversity. So setting priorities and resisting impulses. That's why often someone with ADHD will start on one task and move to another and another, and then come back again. So being able to support our employees with those executive functions is so important. And then setting our team up for success. So with our clear instruction, written, verbal, and hands-on, being able to communicate with our team. How do I go back? Thank you guys for your patience with me. I am clearly, I love what I'm talking about, and I do get distracted having ADHD. So I'm trying to work from my notes and from my PowerPoint. So thank you so much. So in supporting our teams, thank you. I'm seeing your encouragement. I really appreciate it. Something that's also really helpful for people with neurodiverse brains is having a buddy on their team or being able to body double. And so that is why I have this photo of the two people working together at one desk. So when we have neurodiverse people on our teams, being able to pair them up with someone else, whether it's a manager or a coworker, so that they can collaborate and be able to work in the same space or on the same, even not in the same space or on the same projects, but knowing that they can check in with one another. So there are different support groups for people with ADHD, especially that I've seen, where they can log on to Zoom calls at regular intervals, where they log on, they all know that they're going to work on something of their own nature for 1 hour. And at the end of the hour, check in and be able to celebrate with one another the things that they accomplished and take that time to be with one another, but be able to be working independently. So looking at ways that maybe we can implement that into our own offices and in our own teams. I was reading about autism, and there is a wonderful book called, I have it here. Called Uniquely Human, A Different Way of Seeing Autism by Barry Prezant and Tom's Fieldsmeyer. And he discusses how autism can be described as a disorder of trust. And so when we want to build trust with our team and with our coworkers, And when we're in the workplace. And so having consistency, having clear expectations, having that sensory friendly environment, the ability to ask for what we need and know that what we need one day to another can shift and change. And so having that flexibility to be able to support our team in those ways. I was talking with a friend of mine who has ADHD and is a business owner, and was talking about how we can create sensory friendly environments for our employees. And he laughed and he goes, "Oh, if you've only been to my office." He goes, "I have a pull-up bar in one doorway, and we have hammocks and beanbag chairs, and employees can work from their desks or from the beanbag chairs. I'll take my laptop into the hammock. I'll go into the conference room and close the door if I need it to be quiet or have my office." And so there are really fun ways that we can incorporate these sensory friendly environments. It doesn't just have to be a quiet room with the lights, turned down low. There are lots of different ways that we can support our teams. Another thing is to encourage our employees to get up and move. Movement is so important and something that we all need. And so it's been shown that for the ADHD brain, that 15 minutes of movement can help them focus for 2 full hours. And so being able to understand that all of our employees have different needs and encourage us to do something as simple as maybe take a walk around the office or get up and be able to move and come back down, that can really assist with our focus and being able to get back on track. Some strengths of people with neurodiversity that I would love to highlight. This is by no means exhaustive, but I think is exciting to think about when we're looking to hire a neurodiverse team. People with autism often have specialist knowledge. I know that I can think of many friends and colleagues who are on the autistic spectrum, and when I get to hear about the things that they love, it is so encouraging to be able to see them talk about the thing that they love. And so if we can bring that love into our office and find a way for them to be able to work in something that they care about so deeply, how exciting and fulfilling. As I mentioned before, incredible accuracy, attention to detail. People with ADHD are incredibly resilient, creative, spontaneous, love conversation, have a ton of energy, as you may be able to see with myself, and that ability to hyper-focus, as I mentioned. People with dyslexia are great at problem solving, they're creative, observant, and they actually have the ability to think in 3D, which I think is the coolest superpower. People with Tourette's are creative, they're perceptually accurate, energetic, often have a great sense of humor and really wonderful skills in empathy. Dysgraphia is a difficulty getting thoughts onto paper or being able to write down thoughts or images. And they're really wonderful auditory storytellers, which would totally make sense since they have that difficulty getting it onto the page. They would be really good with speaking it. Wonderful listeners, incredible at memorization, problem solving, and are often very social. Dyscalculia, or the difficulty with numbers, really wonderful strategic thinkers, creative. They have wonderful practical ability to do things hands-on, a love for words, and very intuitive thinkers. And dyspraxia, or difficulty with large motor skills, are wonderful in leadership, listening, empathy, strategy, and problem solving. And so as I think of these different types of neurodiverse people, I can think of all kinds of wonderful ways that I would want to incorporate them in any organization that I am a part of. And I know that it is something that you would probably like to do as well. There are many companies, especially in the tech world, that have specific neurodiversity initiatives wanting to employ people that are neurodiverse, specifically because they see this as an asset, not only to the employee, but also to the company as a whole. And some of those companies are Microsoft, AT&T, Ernst & Young, as I mentioned, JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America, as well as many others. And there are also companies that are contracting, especially autistic individuals, to come in and be contract workers for companies that maybe feel like they're not quite ready to implement some of these hiring practices or support their autistic employees well yet internally. There are companies like Audicon, who Richard Branson is an incredible investor in, who hire and support autistic individuals to be contract workers in different fields of technology for companies. And so seeing all of this information about neurodiversity in the workplace has been so encouraging for me, as we do make up such a large part of our population, and being able to employ neurodiverse talent and be able to support a neurodiverse team is a benefit for everybody. Here are some resources. I can make sure to have this all sent out. You can screenshot it, or I'm not sure, Marissa, the best way to get some of these over to everybody. And then in summary,
they are all linked in the chat.
Wonderful, thank you. By seeking to understand and engage with the neurodiverse community within our places of work, we'll be able to accomplish so much more than we would otherwise. Embracing the strengths and understanding the challenges others face creates an environment where everyone can be known, understood, and accepted. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. Virtual applause for Amanda. Thank you for all of that really amazing information. We are going to stop the recording in just a second so that we can open this up for more dialogue. But I want to ask one question before I stop the recording. And so, yeah. Amanda, I'm going to put you on the spot. What is one thing that you wish your former employers were able to do for you that would have been a game changer?
Yeah.
In your experience.
So I had at my last job, I was working in sales for a company that worked in the real estate industry. And I asked on a weekly basis if they could help me with our CRM. So what was difficult for me in my position was getting the information of the people that I met into the database. And for some reason, with my executive functioning, I had a really hard time with information going from a business card to my CRM. Once it was in there, I was great, but for some reason that was really difficult. And so I asked, and actually had gotten permission from one of our VPs to use, we had a virtual assistant team. I got permission to use a virtual assistant team to where I could just take photos of all of the business cards or scan them in, and they would upload them for me. And that VP ended up leaving, and I never was able to get that accommodation. That was something for me that was really useful, or that would have been really helpful. But really, I think, yeah, taking my request seriously is the most important thing, because I wasn't asking for something that I didn't need, and that wouldn't have made me so much more successful in my role.
Thank you so much for sharing. So again, I'm going to stop the recording so we can share as vulnerably and that not be available to the public world. And thank you so much, Amanda. We really, really appreciate all of your input.